The names were never meant to be public. Chapter 1, The Keeper of Secrets. The rain had been falling on Washington for 3 days straight, the kind of persistent, colorless drizzle that turned the city's monuments into gray ghosts and made even the most familiar streets feel foreign. Daniel Reeves stood at his office window on the 4th floor of the J. Edgar Hoover building, watching rivulets trace erratic paths down the glass, merging and separating like the threads of the cases he'd spent 23 years unraveling. He was 51 years old, though colleagues often mistook him for older. The job had a way of aging people from the inside out, not through dramatic trauma, but through the accumulated weight of knowing things that couldn't be unknown, carrying secrets that pressed against the chest like stones. His hair had gone silver early at 38, after the Philadelphia case. His eyes, a pale blue that his wife Sarah used to say reminded her of shallow water, had developed a habitual squint, as if he were constantly reading fine print in dim light. Which, in a sense, he was. The Financial Crimes Division occupied a peculiar space in the FBI's ecosystem. It lacked the immediate visceral drama of the violent crimes units, the clear moral lines of counterterrorism, the technological flash of cyber divisions. But Daniel had learned long ago that following money told stories that blood and bullets often obscured. Money was patient. Money remembered. Money left trails that wound through shell corporations and offshore accounts, through charitable foundations and political action committees, through the gleaming lobbies of K Street and the hushed dining rooms where policy was really made. His office reflected his 23 years of service, organized but not neat, functional but not sterile. The desk was old oak, scarred and solid, inherited from a mentor who died of a heart attack at this very desk in 2009. Filing cabinets lined one wall, their locks all different, each requiring its own key on Daniel's ring. He kept them locked even though the office itself was secure, even though every document inside was digitally backed up on encrypted servers. It was a habit born from an older era, when paper was all there was, when burning a file meant its contents were truly gone. On his desk sat a single photograph in a simple frame. Sarah and their daughter Emma at Ocean City, maybe 7 years ago now. Emma had been 14 then, grinning gap-toothed at the camera, her mother's dark hair whipping in the wind. Sarah's expression was softer, knowing, her hand on Emma's shoulder in a gesture that seemed both protective and proud. Daniel kept meaning to update it with something more recent. Emma was in college now at Georgetown, studying political science with that fierce idealism only the young and untainted could maintain, but he'd never gotten around to it. Sometimes he wondered if he kept the old photo because it captured a version of his family that still felt whole, before Emma had started looking at him with questions in her eyes about the late nights and the cases he couldn't discuss and the weight he brought home like fog seeping under the door. He turned from the window as his computer chimed softly. 6:47 in the morning. The building was still mostly empty, which was when Daniel did his best thinking. In a few hours, the office would fill with the controlled chaos of 60 agents working 60 different threads of financial malfeasance. Tax evasion, money laundering, securities fraud, the endless creative variations of greed dressed in legal language. The email that had appeared on his screen was from Marcus Webb, his supervisor and the assistant director of the Financial Crimes Division. The subject line was blank. The message contained only a meeting time, 8 a.m., conference room 7B, and a single word, alone. Daniel felt something shift in his chest, a small cold stone dropping into still water. In 23 years, Marcus had never sent an email like this. Conference room 7B was in the secure wing, the section of the building where even other FBI agents needed special clearance to enter. Alone meant no case team, no junior agents, no documentation trail of who was meeting with whom. He printed the email, another old habit, and watched it slide from his printer, then immediately fed it into his shredder. The whir of the blades was loud in the quiet office. An hour and 13 minutes. Daniel returned to his computer and tried to focus on the mortgage fraud case out of Phoenix that had been occupying most of his attention for the past 6 weeks. A lending company had been systematically inflating property values, selling the fraudulent mortgages to unsuspecting investors, then vanishing the profits through a network of LLCs registered in Delaware and Nevada. It was elegant in its way, the kind of scheme that required both sophisticated financial knowledge and absolute moral vacancy. He traced the money to 3 principals and was building the case for indictment. But his mind kept drifting to that blank subject line, that single word, alone. At 7:30 he stood, straightened his tie, navy blue with thin gray stripes, the same tie he wore every Monday, and locked his office door behind him. The hallways were beginning to fill now with the morning shift, agents carrying coffee in paper cups, talking quietly about weekend plans or case developments. Daniel nodded to a few familiar faces but didn't stop to chat. He'd never been good at the social lubricant that made workplaces run smoothly, the casual conversations that built rapport and trust. He knew it had hurt his career advancement, knew that his 2 decades in the same division while contemporaries climbed to supervisory roles and executive positions was partly his own fault. But he'd never wanted those positions. He wanted to work cases. He wanted to follow the money. The secure wing required badge access and a PIN code. Daniel entered both, heard the heavy lock click open, and stepped into a corridor that felt different from the rest of the building, quieter, more still, as if sound itself was classified. Conference room 7B was at the end, its door unmarked except for the alphanumeric designation. Marcus Webb was already inside, standing at the window with his back to the door. He was a large man, 6'3" and broad-shouldered, with the kind of physical presence that made people unconsciously step aside in hallways. But his size was gentle, his manner careful and deliberate. He'd been a prosecutor before joining the bureau, had a law degree from Yale and a reputation for encyclopedic knowledge of financial regulation. Daniel trusted him as much as he trusted anyone in this building. "Close the door," Marcus said without turning around. Daniel did, heard it seal with a soft pneumatic sigh. The room was small, windowless except for the one Marcus stood at, which looked out onto an interior courtyard that few people even knew existed. A table, 6 chairs, a phone for conference calls. Nothing else. Marcus turned, and Daniel saw immediately that something was wrong. His supervisor's face had a grayness to it, a haggard quality that spoke of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. His tie was slightly loose, which for Marcus, a man of almost compulsive neatness, was like arriving to work in his pajamas. "Sit down, Daniel," Marcus said quietly. Daniel sat. Marcus remained standing, hands in his pockets, looking at something past Daniel's shoulder. "What I'm about to tell you," Marcus began, then stopped. Started again. "What I'm about to tell you stays in this room. Not your wife, not your partner if you're assigned one, not your priest if you have one. Are we clear?" "Yes." "I need more than yes, Daniel. I need to know you understand that what happens next could end both our careers if it's mishandled. Could end more than careers, actually. I need to know you're all the way in before I say another word, because once I do, there's no going back to how things were 15 minutes ago." Daniel studied his supervisor's face, saw real fear there beneath the professional composure. In 23 years he'd never seen Marcus afraid. "I'm in," Daniel said. Marcus nodded slowly, then reached into his jacket and withdrew a thin folder. He placed it on the table between them but didn't open it. "6 weeks ago we received a referral from Treasury. A routine audit of campaign finance records flagged some irregularities in donation patterns to a PAC called Americans for Prosperity and Growth. Nothing dramatic, just contributions that seemed statistically unlikely in their timing and amounts. The kind of thing that usually turns out to be clerical errors or, at worst, some local businessman playing fast and loose with contribution limits." Daniel waited. He knew this rhythm, had been on the receiving end of hundreds of these briefings. The calm opening, the suggestion of routine, before the ground opened up beneath your feet. "We assigned it to Chin in the campaign finance unit. Junior agent, smart, detail-oriented." She started pulling threads. The PAC had received about $4.3 million over 18 months from what appeared to be legitimate small donors. But when Chin started actually contacting these donors, just standard verification calls, about 30% of them had no record of making any contributions. Another 20% had made contributions, but for different amounts than what was recorded. Marcus paused, his jaw working as if he was chewing something bitter. Chin did what she was supposed to do. She expanded the investigation. Started looking at where the PAC's money went, who it supported, what its stated mission was versus its actual activities. And that's when things got complicated. He opened the folder finally, slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a printout of a simple organizational chart, the kind you might see in any corporate annual report. At the top was Americans for Prosperity and Growth. Below it, connected by lines, were names of board members, officers, advisory committee members. Daniel scanned the list. Saw nothing unusual at first. A mix of business people, a former congressman, a retired general, a tech entrepreneur he vaguely recognized from news coverage. Then his eye caught on a name in the lower right corner, listed as Special Advisor, Richard Hollings. Senator Richard Hollings. Chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Third-term senator from Virginia, widely respected, frequently mentioned as a potential presidential candidate. "Keep reading," Marcus said quietly. Daniel's eyes moved down the page. More names, more connections. A federal judge. The CEO of a defense contractor. A deputy director at the State Department. The president of a major university. Each name by itself was notable but not shocking. Influential people often lent their names to political causes, sat on boards, advised organizations. But all of them together, connected to a pact that appeared to be falsifying its donor records. Chin brought this to her supervisor 3 weeks ago, Marcus continued. He escalated it to me. I spent 2 weeks running every possible legitimate explanation through my head. Maybe there was confusion about how donations were being bundled. Maybe there was a database error. Maybe the donors Chin contacted were confused or didn't remember. I wanted there to be a simple answer. But there isn't, Daniel said. It wasn't a question. No, there isn't. We ran a full forensic analysis of the PAC's financial records. The money isn't coming from the donors it claims. It's being laundered through them, their names, their addresses, sometimes their credit card numbers. But the actual money is coming from somewhere else, being split up and disguised to look like grassroots support when it's really a massive coordinated funding operation. Daniel felt his pulse quicken, that familiar sensation that came with the early stages of a major case. Part excitement, part dread. How much money are we talking about? In this PAC alone? Over 40 million over the past 3 years. But Daniel? Marcus sat down now, leaned forward with his elbows on the table. This PAC isn't alone. We found the same pattern in 6 other organizations. Same donor fabrication technique, same financial fingerprints, same web of connections to influential people. In total, we're looking at somewhere north of $200 million being funneled through fake grassroots donations into political organizations that have direct ties to sitting senators, federal judges, corporate executives, and senior government officials. The room seemed to contract around Daniel. $200 million. Not embezzled from a company or stolen from investors. Those were crimes of greed, understandable in their way. This was something else. This was systematic corruption at a scale that could shake public faith in institutions that were already teetering. Where's the money really coming from? Daniel asked. That's what I need you to find out. Chin identified the pattern, but she doesn't have the experience for an investigation this sensitive. I need someone who's been doing this long enough to understand how deep these things can go, someone who won't panic when powerful people start making phone calls, someone who can follow money through the kind of sophisticated structures we're clearly dealing with here. Marcus, an investigation like this, the targets are going to know. They're going to lawyer up, call in favors, apply pressure. This is the kind of thing that gets shut down before it even really starts. I know. So why are we doing it? Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Because it's our job, Daniel. Because laws were broken, and broken systematically, and broken by people who should know better. Because if we don't investigate this, then what the hell are we here for? Daniel thought of Emma, of her idealism, her belief that institutions still functioned, that justice still meant something. He thought of all the cases he'd worked, the careful documentation, the patient pursuit of evidence, the satisfaction of seeing a case file go to prosecution and knowing he'd done his job correctly. He thought of Sarah's face when he told her about late nights, about cases he couldn't discuss, about the weight he carried. When do I start? He asked. Marcus slid the folder across the table. You already have. Everything Chin has developed is in here. I'm assigning her to assist you, but you're the case agent now. Official designation is Operation Blind Trust, which I know is a little on the nose, but Cyber Division picked it, so we're stuck with it. You'll report directly to me, no one else. Written reports only, hand-delivered. No emails, no digital case files beyond the secure server. This stays compartmentalized. Daniel picked up the folder, felt its weight. Maybe 60 pages inside, he estimated. 60 pages that represented hundreds of hours of work, thousands of connections, millions of dollars in illegal activity. One more thing, Marcus said, and his voice dropped even lower. Be careful, Daniel. Not just professionally careful. I know you know how to run an investigation. I mean, be personally careful. Watch who you talk to, where you go, who might be paying attention. People who move this kind of money, who have this kind of reach. They protect their interests, and they do it effectively. Are you telling me I'm in danger? I'm telling you that this case is going to threaten very powerful people, and powerful people don't get powerful by being careless about threats. Just be aware. Be smart. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken implications hanging between them. Somewhere in the building, phones were ringing, agents were interviewing witnesses, cases were being worked in the methodical, procedural way that the Bureau had perfected over decades. But in this small room, Daniel felt like he'd stepped through a membrane into something different, darker, where the usual rules might not apply. Is there anything else? Daniel asked. Marcus shook his head. Just read the file. Then call Chin, get up to speed on her findings. And Daniel? He waited until their eyes met. Thank you for taking this. I know what I'm asking. Daniel stood, folder in hand, and walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when Marcus spoke again. My daughter wants to go into law enforcement. She's a freshman at Maryland, criminology major. She still believes the system works, that good guys win, that we make a difference. Marcus's voice was soft, almost talking to himself. I'd like her to keep believing that. Daniel nodded, though Marcus couldn't see it with his back turned, and stepped out into the corridor. The door sealed behind him with that same pneumatic sigh, like an airlock closing, like the boundary between one world and another. He walked back through the secure wing, through the badge-controlled door, into the familiar hallways of the regular building. Everything looked the same. Same fluorescent lights, same industrial carpet, same photos of former directors on the walls. But Daniel felt different, felt like he was carrying something that made the air around him heavier. In his office, he locked the door and sat at his old oak desk. He opened the folder carefully as if it might contain something volatile. The first page was Chen's initial report, dated 3 weeks earlier. Her handwriting in the margins was neat, precise, full of question marks and arrows connecting different pieces of information. A good investigator's mind, making connections, seeing patterns. The second page was a list of names. 63 of them. Politicians, judges, corporate executives, nonprofit directors, university administrators. Some Daniel recognized immediately. Others he'd never heard of. But each name had a notation next to it indicating their connection to one of the 7 organizations that had been receiving the laundered money. He read through the entire file once quickly, getting the shape of it, then started again from the beginning, this time taking notes on a legal pad. By the time he finished his second read-through, it was past noon. He'd missed 2 phone calls and a meeting about the Phoenix mortgage case. None of that seemed to matter anymore. Daniel stood and walked back to his window, looked out at the rain that was still falling, had never stopped falling. Somewhere in this city, in offices and conference rooms and quiet restaurants where deals were made, the 63 people on that list were going about their days, making decisions that affected millions of lives, accumulating power and influence. And somewhere, someone had been paying them. Secretly. Systematically. Successfully. Until now. Daniel pulled out his phone and dialed the extension for Agent Chin. It rang 3 times before she picked up. Chin, she said, her voice young and bright. It's Daniel Reeves. We need to talk. Chapter 2, The Pattern Emerges. Agent Jennifer Chin arrived at Daniel's office at 2:15, carrying a laptop bag and a cardboard box that looked heavy enough to make her lean slightly to one side as she walked. She was 28, Daniel knew from her personnel file, though she looked younger. One of those people who would still be getting carded at bars when they were 40. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the standard bureau uniform of dark suit and sensible shoes, but there was an energy about her that reminded Daniel of Emma, that same controlled intensity of someone who believed their work mattered. Agent Reeves, she said, setting the box down on the floor beside his desk with a soft thud. Thank you for taking this on. I know it's complicated. Sit, Daniel said, gesturing to one of the 2 chairs opposite his desk. And you can call me Daniel. If we're going to be working this together, we might as well skip the formalities. She sat, setting her laptop bag on the other chair. Her hands folded in her lap, then unfolded, then folded again. Nervous energy looking for somewhere to go. Tell me how you found it, Daniel said. Not the official version in the report. Tell me how it actually happened, the sequence of thoughts, the moment you realized this wasn't just a clerical error. Chin nodded slowly, seeming to gather her thoughts. When she spoke, her voice was measured, careful. It was a Tuesday. February 14th, actually, Valentine's Day. I remember because my boyfriend had sent flowers to the office and everyone was teasing me about them. A small smile flickered across her face, then disappeared. The Treasury referral had come in the previous Friday, and I'd spent Monday doing the preliminary database searches, pulling the PAC's financial records, getting familiar with the names and amounts. Standard first-day case work. She leaned forward slightly, and Daniel could see her slipping into the memory, reliving it. Tuesday morning, I started making the verification calls to donors. I had a list of maybe 40 names that I'd randomly selected from the contributor database, just a sample to confirm that the records matched reality. The first 3 calls went fine. Reached the donors, they confirmed they'd made contributions in the amounts listed, everything matched. But the 4th call. She paused, her brow furrowing. The fourth call was to a woman named Patricia Morrison in Silver Spring. According to the records, she donated $1,500 to Americans for Prosperity and Growth over 6 months, 3 separate $500 contributions. When I reached her, she was confused. Said she'd never heard of the organization, had never made any political contributions at all. She was a retired schoolteacher, widowed, living on her pension and Social Security. $1,500 would have been a significant amount of money for her. You verified her identity? Daniel asked. Completely. I had her Social Security number from the contribution records, her address, date of birth, everything matched. It was definitely the same Patricia Morrison who was listed as a donor. But she insisted she'd never given any money, had never even been contacted by anyone asking for money. Chen reached into her laptop bag and pulled out a notebook, flipped it open to a page marked with a yellow sticky note. I thought maybe it was identity theft. Someone had stolen her information and was using it to make fraudulent contributions. So I asked her to check her bank statements, her credit card bills, see if there were any charges she didn't recognize. She put me on hold for maybe 10 minutes while she went through her records. When she came back, she said there was nothing. No unexplained charges, no missing money, nothing that suggested her accounts had been compromised. So someone had used her name and information, but not her actual money, Daniel said. Exactly. Which didn't make sense in a normal identity theft scenario. Why go through the trouble of stealing someone's identity just to make political contributions that don't actually draw from their accounts? There's no obvious financial gain. Daniel felt the familiar sensation of a case opening up before him, like standing at the edge of a canyon and seeing how deep it really went. What did you do next? I kept calling. Out of my sample of 40 donors, 12 of them had no record of making any contributions. 14 more had made contributions, but in different amounts than what was listed. Usually smaller amounts, like they'd given $100 but the records showed $500. The discrepancy was always in the direction of the records showing more money than was actually given. Chen flipped to another page in her notebook, covered in dense handwriting and arrows connecting different points. That's when I knew this wasn't random identity theft or database errors. The pattern was too consistent, too systematic. Someone was deliberately inflating contribution amounts and creating fake donors to make it look like this PAC was receiving widespread grassroots support. But the real question was why, and where was the extra money actually coming from? She pulled her laptop from the bag, opened it, and turned it so Daniel could see the screen. It showed a complex spreadsheet, rows and columns of numbers and names color-coded in a way that hurt to look at. I spent the next week building this. Every contribution to Americans for Prosperity and Growth over the past 3 years, cross-referenced with bank records where I could get them, phone interviews with donors, public record searches. The red entries are confirmed fake, donors who don't exist or who deny making any contributions. The yellow entries are inflated, real donors who gave less than the records show. The green entries are legitimate contributions that match all the verification. Daniel leaned forward, studying the screen. The spreadsheet was overwhelmingly red and yellow. Maybe 20% green at most. 4.3 million in total contributions, Chen continued. Of that, I estimate only about 800,000 actually came from the donors listed. The rest, roughly 3.5 million, came from somewhere else and was disguised to look like small donor grassroots support. You said there were other organizations with the same pattern, Daniel said. How did you find them? Chen's expression shifted, became more guarded. That's where I probably went beyond my initial mandate. I started looking at the board members and advisors for Americans for Prosperity and Growth, tracking what other organizations they were connected to. Then I ran the same kind of verification analysis on those organizations' donor records. Found the exact same pattern: fake donors, inflated amounts, sophisticated laundering that would only show up if you actually contacted the people allegedly making contributions. 7 organizations total, Daniel said, remembering the briefing from Marcus. 7 that I found. There could be more. These were just the ones with overlapping connections to the same network of influential people. She closed the laptop, met Daniel's eyes. That's when I took it to my supervisor. Because at that point, I wasn't just looking at campaign finance violations anymore. I was looking at something much bigger. Daniel stood, walked to his window. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city washed clean and gray under low clouds. He could see people on the street below, walking with purpose, going about their lives, unaware that 4 floors above them, 2 federal agents were discussing evidence of corruption that reached into the highest levels of government and business. The money has to be coming from somewhere, Daniel said, more to himself than to Chen. 3.5 million in one pack, multiply that by 7 organizations. We're talking about real resources, real wealth being moved through these channels. That kind of money doesn't just appear. It has to come from someone with means and motive. I tried to trace it, Chin said quietly. Spent days going through bank records trying to follow the actual flow of funds. But whoever set this up knew what they were doing. The money comes in through layers of LLCs and non-profit organizations, gets split up and redistributed, passes through enough legitimate-looking transactions that the original source becomes almost impossible to identify. At least, impossible for me to identify with the resources and access I had. Daniel turned back from the window. But not impossible for someone with 23 years of experience following money through exactly these kinds of structures. Chen's expression brightened slightly. That's what Assistant Director Webb said. That if anyone could trace this back to the source, it would be you. Marcus has more faith in me than I probably deserve, Daniel said. But even as he said it, he felt the old familiar pull, the puzzle solver's itch that had driven him through 2 decades of financial investigations. Money always left trails. Always. You just had to be patient enough and smart enough to find them. He returned to his desk, pulled out a fresh legal pad. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Walk me through the financial structure of Americans for Prosperity and Growth. Who are the officers? How is it legally organized? What banks do they use? How do they report their finances to the FEC? For the next 2 hours, Chin took him through everything she'd learned, every detail she'd uncovered, every connection she'd made. Daniel filled page after page with notes, drawing diagrams, making lists, highlighting names and organizations that appeared repeatedly. The picture that emerged was one of careful sophistication. Americans for Prosperity and Growth was registered as a 501(c)(4) nonprofit, a social welfare organization that could engage in political activity without disclosing its donors. It had been founded 6 years earlier by a group of businesspeople who claimed to be concerned about economic policy and government efficiency. On paper, it looked entirely legitimate. But beneath that legitimate surface was a structure designed to obscure and deceive. The PAC maintained accounts at 4 different banks. Contributions came in through a web of smaller organizations and donor-advised funds, each transaction carefully sized to avoid triggering automatic reporting requirements. The money then flowed out to support political campaigns, fund issue advocacy, pay for advertising, and support other nonprofit organizations that shared similar goals. They're not doing anything that's obviously illegal in terms of how they move the money, Chin explained. It's the source of the money that's the problem, the fake donors, the laundered contributions. If those were real grassroots donations, everything else they're doing would be completely legal, just aggressive tax planning and political strategy. But they're not real, Daniel said. Which means someone is going to a lot of trouble and expense to make it look like these organizations have broad popular support when they actually don't. Right. The question is why? What's the benefit of making it look like you have grassroots support when you're really being funded by a small number of wealthy donors? Why not just use a super PAC or a traditional nonprofit that doesn't require donor disclosure? Daniel tapped his pen against the legal pad, thinking. Outside his office, he could hear the sounds of the building settling into late afternoon. Voices in the hallway, a phone ringing somewhere, the hum of the ventilation system. Control, he said finally. If you're a politician or a judge or a corporate executive, and someone approaches you with financial support from what appears to be a broad grassroots organization that carries political weight, it looks like you have real popular support, not just backing from wealthy special interests. It gives you cover, legitimacy. Makes it easier to justify your positions and your actions. But if those same politicians or judges knew the money was really coming from a handful of wealthy donors with specific agendas, Chin said slowly, then they'd be more cautious about accepting it. Or they'd have to disclose relationships that might look corrupt. Or they'd face questions about who they're really working for. Daniel felt the pieces clicking together. This whole structure is designed to disguise influence, to make coordinated funding look like organic support, to give powerful people plausible deniability about who's backing them and why. Chin nodded, her expression troubled. Which means the people on that list of 63 names, the politicians, the judges, the executives, they might not all know where the money is really coming from. Some of them might genuinely believe they're being supported by grassroots organizations. Maybe, Daniel said. Or maybe they know exactly what's happening and they don't care because the money helps them achieve their goals. Either way, when we start pulling on these threads, when we start asking questions and demanding documentation, people are going to realize that their funding sources are under investigation. And they're going to want it to stop, Chin said quietly. Yes, they're going to want it to stop. Daniel looked at the pages of notes he'd accumulated, at the box of files Chen had brought, at the laptop screen still showing that spreadsheet of red and yellow and green. This was the moment in every major case when the scope of the work ahead became clear, when the initial excitement of discovery gave way to the sobering realization of how long and difficult the investigation would be. "We need to prioritize," he said. 7 organizations, 63 influential people, over $200 million in questionable funding. We can't investigate all of it at once. We need to pick a thread and pull it, see where it leads. "I've been thinking about that," Chen said. She pulled a manila folder from her laptop bag, opened it to reveal a printout of a photograph. It showed a man in his 60s, silver-haired and distinguished-looking, smiling at a formal dinner of some kind. Richard Hollings, Senator from Virginia, chair of the Intelligence Committee. He's connected to 4 of the 7 organizations we've identified, either as a board member, advisor, or major beneficiary of their political spending. Daniel studied the photograph. He knew Hollings by reputation, a moderate Republican, well-respected on both sides of the aisle, known for thoughtful policy positions and careful constituent service. Not someone who immediately raised red flags. "Why Hollings?" Daniel asked. "Because he's running for president. Hasn't announced yet, but everyone knows it's coming. He's been building a campaign organization, traveling to early primary states, meeting with donors and power brokers. And 3 of the organizations we've identified have dramatically increased their spending in support of issues he champions over the past 18 months. Exactly the timeline you'd expect if they were positioning to back his presidential campaign." Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. A presidential campaign meant national media attention, enormous financial resources, intense scrutiny from opponents and the press. It also meant that any investigation touching the candidate would immediately become politically explosive. If Hollings is planning to run for president on the strength of support from organizations that are being funded through systematic fraud. Chen didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "Then we need to know about it before the campaign starts," Daniel said. "Before he's the nominee, before the general election, before he potentially becomes president while under investigation." "How long do you think we have?" Chen asked. Daniel thought about presidential campaign timelines, about the political calendar, about how these things typically unfolded. If he's going to run, he'll announce sometime in the next 6 months. Probably sooner. Which means we have maybe 3 months to develop enough evidence to either clear him or formally open an investigation into his campaign financing. 3 months, Chen repeated. She looked at the box of files, at her laptop, at the notes spread across Daniel's desk. "Is that even possible?" "It has to be," Daniel said. "Because if we don't move fast enough, this whole investigation could get buried under political pressure. But if we move too fast, make mistakes, draw conclusions without enough evidence, we'll destroy our own case and possibly damage innocent people's reputations." He stood, began pacing the small space behind his desk. It was a habit from his early years in the bureau, this pacing, this physical movement that helped his mind work through complex problems. "Here's what we're going to do," he said. "We're going to focus on the money. Forget about the politics for now, forget about who's involved and what positions they hold. We're going to treat this like any other financial investigation. Follow the money from wherever it really originates, through all the layers of organizations and accounts, until we can identify the actual source. Once we know who's really funding these operations, then we can start asking questions about motive and coordination and whether the recipients knew what was happening." Chen nodded, pulling out her notebook and pen. "Where do we start?" "Americans for Prosperity and Growth. It's the first organization you identified, the one with the clearest connection to Hollings, and we have your preliminary analysis of its donor patterns. We're going to do a complete forensic reconstruction of its finances, every dollar in, every dollar out, every bank account, every transaction. We'll subpoena records from the banks, from the PAC itself, from any organizations that sent or received money. We'll build a timeline showing exactly how the money moved and where it really came from. That's going to require a lot of subpoenas," Chen said. "Banks, corporations, maybe individuals. Once we start issuing those, people will know we're looking. Can't be helped. We'll be strategic about it, start with the institutions least likely to alert our targets. But yes, eventually people will notice. Which means we need to move fast once we start." Daniel returned to his desk, pulled out a blank piece of paper, began sketching an organizational chart. "We'll need more people. This is too much work for just the 2 of us. I want someone from Cyber Division to help with the digital forensics. Financial transactions leave electronic trails that can tell us things paper records can't. And we'll need a junior agent to help with the database work, tracking down donors, cross-referencing records. Who are you thinking? I'll talk to Marcus about it. He'll want to keep the team small, need to know only. But we need enough hands to do this right. He looked up at Chin. How much does your supervisor know? Just that I found evidence of donor fraud in a PAC investigation and escalated it. He doesn't know about the other organizations or the scale of what we're looking at. Webb told me to keep the details compartmentalized. Good. Let's keep it that way. The fewer people who know the full scope of this investigation, the harder it is for someone to interfere with it. Chin was quiet for a moment, her pen hovering over her notebook. When she spoke, her voice was careful. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think we're going to be allowed to finish this investigation? Really finish it, I mean. Follow it wherever it leads, even if it leads to very powerful people? It was the question Daniel had been avoiding asking himself since Marcus's briefing that morning. The question that lived in the space between idealism and experience, between how the system was supposed to work and how it actually did. I don't know, he said honestly. I've worked cases that got shut down for political reasons, cases where we had the evidence but never got to prosecution because someone made a phone call to someone else and suddenly the resources weren't available or the priorities shifted. It happens more than people outside the bureau realize. But you're still going to do this, Chin said. It wasn't quite a question. Yes, because maybe this time will be different. Or maybe it won't, but at least we'll have tried. At least we'll have done our jobs. He met her eyes. Marcus was right to bring you onto this. You did good work finding this pattern and you did the right thing bringing it forward. But I need you to understand that this investigation is going to get difficult. We're going to face resistance, pressure, obstacles. People are going to want us to stop. And I can't promise you that we'll win. Chin nodded slowly. I understand. But I still want to do this. I still think it matters. Daniel felt something in his chest ease slightly. Whatever else happened, at least he had a partner who understood what they were facing, who was choosing to move forward anyway. Okay then, he said. Let's get to work. They spent the next hour organizing the files, creating a work plan, dividing up initial tasks. Chin would start drafting subpoenas for the bank records and corporate filings they'd need. Daniel would brief Marcus on their plan and request additional resources. They'd meet again tomorrow morning to review findings and adjust their strategy. It was past 6 when Chin finally packed up her laptop and files, leaving the cardboard box in Daniel's office for safekeeping. As she reached the door, she paused, turned back. Thank you, she said, for taking this seriously. For not just burying it. We don't know yet that we're not going to bury it, Daniel said, or that someone else won't bury it for us. But at least we're trying. That's more than a lot of people would do. After she left, Daniel sat alone in his office as the building emptied around him, as the sounds of the workday gave way to the quiet of evening. He thought about calling Sarah, letting her know he'd be late again. But she probably already knew. After 23 years of this work, she'd learned to expect the late nights, the cases that consumed him, the weight he brought home. Instead, he opened the folder Marcus had given him that morning, looked again at that list of 63 names. Politicians, judges, executives, academics. People who'd built careers and reputations, who wielded influence and made decisions that shaped the country. And somewhere behind them, invisible, using their names and positions as shields, someone was moving money for purposes Daniel didn't yet understand. He closed the folder, locked it in his desk drawer, and turned off his office light. Tomorrow they would start issuing subpoenas, start pulling threads, start the slow methodical work of unraveling whatever this thing was. Tonight, he would go home to Sarah and try to sleep, knowing that by morning everything would be different, that they would have crossed a threshold they couldn't uncross. The rain had started again. Daniel stood at his window and watched it fall, washing the city clean of its daily accumulation of grime and secrets, at least for one more night. Chapter 3, The Thread Unravels. The subpoenas went out on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after Daniel had taken over the investigation. 27 of them, carefully targeted, strategically timed to hit multiple institutions simultaneously so that no single recipient could warn the others. Banks in Virginia, Delaware, and Nevada. Corporate filing offices. The registered agents for a dozen shell companies. The law firm that handled legal work for Americans for Prosperity and Growth. Daniel had spent those 3 weeks preparing, building the legal foundation for each request, ensuring that every subpoena would withstand challenge, that every piece of information they demanded was clearly connected to evidence of a crime. He'd worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office, briefing a career prosecutor named William Tam who specialized in financial fraud and who had a reputation for being meticulous and unintimidated by powerful defendants. "These are going to make noise," Tam had said when he reviewed the subpoena list. He was in his mid-40s, compact and intense, with the kind of focused energy that suggested he drank too much coffee and slept too little. "You understand that? The moment these hit, people are going to start asking questions. Lawyers are going to call their clients. Those clients are going to call other people. Within 48 hours, everyone connected to this thing is going to know the FBI is looking." "I know," Daniel had said. "But we need the records. We can't move forward without them. Just making sure you're ready for what comes next." What came next arrived faster than Daniel had anticipated. The first call came 36 hours after the subpoenas were served. Daniel was in his office, reviewing bank records that had just been delivered from a regional bank in Richmond, when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, a Washington area code. "Daniel Reeves," he answered. "Agent Reeves, this is Martin Kessler. I'm an attorney with Covington and Harlan. I represent Americans for Prosperity and Growth." Daniel felt his pulse quicken slightly, but his voice remained calm. "How can I help you, Mr. Kessler?" "I'm calling about the subpoena my client received yesterday. We're naturally concerned about this development and would like to understand the nature of your investigation. My client has always been fully compliant with all applicable laws and regulations, and we're eager to cooperate with any legitimate inquiry." The words were polite, professional, but Daniel heard the steel underneath. Covington and Harlan was one of Washington's most prestigious law firms, known for representing corporations and political organizations in high-stakes matters. They didn't come cheap, and they didn't call just to offer cooperation. "Mr. Kessler, as I'm sure you understand, I can't discuss the details of an ongoing investigation. The subpoena specifies the records we need. If your client provides them in the timeline requested, that would be appreciated." Of course. We'll certainly comply with the legal requirements. But Agent Reeves, these kinds of inquiries can be disruptive. My client serves an important role in our political process, supporting causes and candidates that millions of Americans care about. Any suggestion of impropriety, even if ultimately unfounded, can have a chilling effect on First Amendment activities. There it was. The First Amendment defense. Daniel had expected it. Political organizations always wrapped themselves in constitutional protections when investigations got uncomfortable. "I'm sure your client's constitutional rights will be fully protected throughout this process," Daniel said. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" Pause. When Kessler spoke again, his tone had shifted, become more direct. "Agent Reeves, I've been practicing law in this city for 28 years. I've seen a lot of investigations that started with great enthusiasm and ended very quietly when people realized they were more complicated than they initially appeared. I'm just suggesting that before you invest too much time and resources in this matter, you might want to consider whether it's really in anyone's interest to proceed. I appreciate the advice, Mr. Kessler. We'll be in touch if we need anything beyond what's specified in the subpoena." Daniel hung up before the lawyer could respond. His hand was steady, but he could feel tension gathering in his shoulders. It had begun. The pressure, the suggestion that maybe this wasn't worth pursuing, the gentle hint that powerful people were watching and would prefer the investigation to go away. He made notes of the conversation, date, time, substance, and filed them in the case folder. Then he called Chin, who was working from a desk in the cyber forensics lab, going through digital transaction records with one of the technical analysts. "We just got our first lawyer call," he told her. "Covington and Harlan representing the pack." Polite threats wrapped in cooperation language. "Should we expect more?" Chin asked. "Count on it. Anyone connected to this is going to be lawyering up and making calls. Just wanted you to be prepared." The second call came that afternoon. This time it was Marcus, asking Daniel to come to his office immediately. The tone in his supervisor's voice suggested it wasn't optional. Marcus's office was larger than Daniel's, with a window that actually provided a decent view of Pennsylvania Avenue. But it had the same institutional feeling, the same sense that it was occupied by someone who spent most of their time thinking about work. The desk was organized into precise stacks of files. A photo of Marcus's family, wife, 2 daughters, sat in a frame next to his computer monitor, the only personal touch in the room. "Close the door," Marcus said when Daniel entered. Daniel did, then sat in the chair across from his supervisor's desk. Marcus was reading something on his computer screen, his jaw tight. "I just got a call from the deputy director," Marcus said without looking up. "He wanted to know why we're investigating Americans for Prosperity and Growth. Wanted to know who authorized the investigation, what evidence we have, and why he wasn't briefed before subpoenas went out. Daniel felt cold spread through his chest. The deputy director was 2 levels above Marcus in the bureau hierarchy, a political appointee who reported directly to the FBI director himself. For him to be calling about a case this early in the investigation meant someone with serious access had made a phone call. What did you tell him? Daniel asked. The truth. That we received a referral from Treasury regarding campaign finance irregularities, that preliminary investigation revealed evidence of systematic donor fraud, and that we're pursuing it through appropriate channels. I also told him that I authorized the investigation and that I had full confidence in the case agents working it. How did he respond? Marcus finally looked up from his computer. His face was drawn, tired in a way that went beyond late nights and long hours. He said he understood our obligation to investigate credible allegations of fraud. He also said that given the sensitive nature of the organizations involved and their role in the political process, we need to be very certain of our facts before we proceed further. He wants weekly briefings on the investigation's progress. Weekly briefings to the deputy director? Marcus, that's unusual. I know. It's also not optional. Marcus leaned back in his chair, rubbed his eyes. Daniel, I need to ask you something and I need a completely straight answer. Do we have this? Is the evidence solid enough to withstand the kind of scrutiny we're about to face? Daniel thought about the donor verification calls, about Patricia Morrison, the retired schoolteacher who had never made the contributions attributed to her. He thought about Chen's spreadsheet with its sea of red and yellow, about the financial patterns that were too consistent to be coincidental, too sophisticated to be accidental. The donor fraud is real, he said. We can prove it. We have testimony from donors who never made contributions, bank records showing discrepancies, a pattern across multiple organizations that can't be explained by error or coincidence. What we don't have yet is the source of the money that was laundered through those fake donors. That's what we're trying to find with these subpoenas. And if we find it, if we can trace the money back to specific individuals or entities, what do you think we're going to find? It was the question Daniel had been avoiding fully confronting, even to himself. Because the answer, if he was being honest, was terrifying. I think we're going to find that someone, maybe one person, maybe a group, has been systematically funding political influence through fraudulent means. That they've built a network of organizations that appear to have grassroots support but are actually being controlled and funded from a central source. That they've used this network to support specific candidates and causes, to shape policy, to influence elections, all while hiding behind a facade of small donor democracy. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Outside his window, Daniel could see the traffic on Pennsylvania Avenue, the endless flow of cars and buses carrying people through the city, everyone going somewhere, doing something, living their lives in blissful ignorance of the secrets being discussed in offices like this one. Do you know what you're describing? Marcus asked quietly. What that would mean if we can prove it? A conspiracy to defraud the American political process. Systematic corruption at a scale that would make Watergate look like a parking violation. And the 63 names on that list, the politicians, the judges, the executives, they'd all be implicated. Their careers destroyed, their reputations ruined, whether they knowingly participated or not. Because once this becomes public, once the media gets hold of it, nuance doesn't matter. Association becomes guilt. Daniel met his supervisor's eyes. Are you asking me to stop? No. God, no. Marcus shook his head emphatically. I'm asking you to understand what we're about to do. I'm asking you to be certain because once we cross a certain threshold, once we develop enough evidence to either charge people or publicly clear them, there's no going back. Lives are going to change. Careers are going to end. The political landscape of this country could shift in ways we can't predict. I understand. Do you? Do you really? Marcus stood, walked to his window, looked out at the city. I've been doing this for 31 years, Daniel. I've seen cases that should have brought down powerful people just evaporate. Evidence that mysteriously became inadmissible. Witnesses who suddenly couldn't remember what they'd said. Prosecutors who got reassigned to other cases. And I've also seen good agents, smart, dedicated people, get destroyed for pursuing investigations that made the wrong people uncomfortable. Is that what you think is going to happen here? I think it's possible. I think we need to be prepared for it. Marcus turned back to face him. But I also think you're right to pursue this. Because if we don't, if we just file it away and pretend we never saw the evidence, then what the hell are we doing here? What's the point of any of this? The same question Marcus had asked 3 weeks ago, in the secure conference room where this had all begun. The same question Daniel had been asking himself every night when he came home late, and Sarah looked at him with concern and understanding and didn't ask questions she knew he couldn't answer. The deputy director wants weekly briefings, Marcus continued. Which means I need daily updates from you. Detailed updates. Everything you find, everyone you talk to, every connection you make. I need to be able to defend this investigation at the highest levels, which means I need to know it as well as you do. Understood. And Daniel? Be careful about who you trust. We don't know how deep this goes, how many people might be connected to it, who might have an interest in seeing this investigation fail. Keep the team small. Compartmentalize information. Don't assume that just because someone works for the Bureau they're on our side. The words sent a chill through Daniel. Marcus was suggesting that the investigation might be compromised from within, that someone in the FBI itself might be working to protect the people they were investigating. Do you have reason to believe there's a leak? Daniel asked. I have reason to be paranoid. Which in this case amounts to the same thing. Marcus returned to his desk, pulled out a file. I'm assigning you 2 more people. Rebecca Santos from Cyber Division, she's one of our best at financial digital forensics, and I trust her completely. And Tom Chin, no relation to Jennifer, from the White Collar Crime Unit. He's young but thorough, and he'll do the grunt work without asking questions he shouldn't ask. That gives us 5 people total. Including you. 5 people to investigate a conspiracy that might involve 63 of the most powerful people in Washington and a funding network worth over $200 million. We're either going to pull off the most important investigation in Bureau history or go down in flames together. Marcus smiled grimly. Should be interesting either way. Daniel took the file with the personnel information for Santos and Chin. When do they start? Tomorrow morning. Brief them on what they need to know, nothing more. Santos gets the digital forensics, Chin gets the donor verification and database work. Keep Jennifer focused on the organizational structures and connections. You coordinate everything and keep me informed. What about the weekly briefings to the deputy director? What are you going to tell him? Marcus's expression hardened. The truth, that we're following the evidence wherever it leads, that we're being thorough and careful and professional, and that we're not backing down just because powerful people are uncomfortable. Daniel stood, file in hand, but didn't immediately leave. There was something he needed to say, had been thinking about saying since that first meeting in the secure conference room. Marcus, why me? You could have assigned this to a supervisor, someone with more political savvy, someone who knows how to navigate the kind of pressure we're facing. Why give it to an agent who's been doing the same job at the same level for 2 decades? Marcus looked at him for a long moment before answering. Because you're the best financial investigator I've ever worked with. Because you don't care about promotions or politics or protecting your career. Because when I look at you, I see someone who still believes that the work matters more than the optics. And because... He paused. Because I think you're one of the few people in this building who would rather go down fighting for the truth than keep your head down and your pension secure. I have a family, Marcus. A daughter in college. A wife who's put up with this job for 23 years. I'm not sure I deserve that much credit. Then do it for them. Do it so your daughter can still believe the system works, so your wife can still be proud of what you do. Do it because if we don't, someone else is going to have to eventually, and they might not have the courage or the skill or the timing to make it stick. Daniel nodded, felt the weight of the file in his hand, the weight of the responsibility Marcus was placing on his shoulders. I'll have an update for you tomorrow, he said. Back in his office, Daniel found Chin waiting for him, her laptop open, excitement barely contained in her expression. You need to see this, she said as soon as he closed the door. The bank records from Richmond came in, the ones for that shell company, Prosperity Holdings LLC. I've been going through the transactions for the past 3 years and I found something. She turned her laptop so he could see the screen. It showed a spreadsheet of wire transfers, dates and amounts and account numbers in neat columns. Prosperity Holdings received regular deposits from 7 different sources, Chin explained, her finger tracing down the list. Amounts varied but the pattern was consistent, deposits every month like clockwork. Then Prosperity Holdings would distribute that money to Americans for prosperity and growth in smaller amounts, spread out over time, designed to look like it was accumulating from many different donors. We already knew Prosperity Holdings was a conduit, Daniel said. That's why we subpoenaed their records. Right, but look at the source accounts. Chin highlighted 7 account numbers. 6 of them are other LLCs, probably more layers of the same money laundering structure. But this one, she pointed to the 7th account. This one is different. It's a personal account registered to an individual. and the deposits from this account weren't regular like the others. They came in 3 large lump sums, $50,000 each, all within a 6-week period 18 months ago. Daniel leaned closer, studying the account number, the dates, the amounts. Do we know whose account it is? Chen's expression was a mixture of triumph and dread. I cross-referenced it with financial disclosure forms from public officials. The account belongs to someone who was required to report it because it held more than $1,000 at the end of the reporting period. She pulled up another document, a financial disclosure form filed with the Office of Government Ethics. At the top was a name Daniel recognized immediately. Richard Hollings, United States Senator from Virginia, chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. The room seemed to contract around them. Daniel stared at the screen, at the account numbers that matched, at the dates of the transfers, at the irrefutable connection between a sitting U.S. senator and an organization that was using fraudulent donor records to fund political activities. $150,000, Chen said quietly. Transferred from Hollings's personal account to a shell company that then funneled money into a PAC that supported his own political activities. And he never disclosed these transfers in any of his financial reports. Are you absolutely certain? Daniel asked. The account number matches exactly? There's no possibility of error? I've checked it 3 times. It's his account. And there's more. She pulled up another spreadsheet. I found similar patterns in the records from 2 of the other LLCs we subpoenaed. Different amounts, different accounts, but the same structure. Personal funds going into shell companies that then distributed to the political organizations. At least 4 other people on our list of 63 have made similar transfers. They were funding their own support networks and disguising it to look like grassroots donations. Daniel sat down heavily in his chair. This was it. The thread that, when pulled, would unravel everything. This was evidence not just of financial fraud but of deliberate, coordinated deception by some of the most powerful people in government. We need to verify every single transaction, he said. Cross-reference every account, confirm every transfer, build a timeline that's absolutely bulletproof. Because when we present this, we're going to be challenged on every detail, every assumption, every conclusion. It has to be perfect. I know, Chen said. I'll start pulling together the documentation. But Daniel, once we formalize this as evidence, once we brief Marcus and the deputy director, there's no walking it back. We're accusing a sitting senator, a senator who chairs the Intelligence Committee, of funding fraud and making illegal campaign contributions. That's a career-ending accusation if we're wrong, and a constitutional crisis if we're right. Daniel felt the familiar sensation of standing at the edge of something vast and dark. Get everything organized. I want to see complete transaction histories for every transfer from Hollings's account and from the other individuals you identified. I want bank statements, canceled checks, wire transfer confirmations, anything that proves the money moved the way you say it did. How long do I have? 2 days. I need to brief Marcus by Monday, and I need to have something solid to show him. Chen nodded, closed her laptop. Daniel, are you scared? The question caught him off guard. He started to give her the professional answer, the reassuring words that would maintain the hierarchy and the distance appropriate to their positions. But then he looked at her face, young, earnest, frightened but determined, and decided she deserved the truth. Yes, he said. I'm terrified. Because either we're about to expose corruption at the highest levels of government, or we're about to destroy our own careers and possibly end up prosecuted ourselves for abuse of power. Either way, our lives are never going to be the same after this. But we're doing it anyway. We're doing it anyway. After Chen left, Daniel sat alone in his office as darkness fell outside his window. He thought about calling Sarah, telling her he'd be late again. But what would he say? That he'd found evidence implicating a U.S. senator in fraud? That the investigation she'd patiently tolerated for 23 years had finally led him to something that might destroy both the guilty and the investigators? Instead, he pulled out the file Marcus had given him, looked at the information on Rebecca Santos and Tom Chen. Tomorrow they would join the investigation, would be briefed on what they needed to know, would become part of this thing that was growing larger and more dangerous with each passing day. 5 people. 5 people against a network of power and money and influence that reached into every corner of Washington. Daniel opened his desk drawer, looked at the photograph of Sarah and Emma at Ocean City 7 years ago, when everything had been simpler. Emma's gap-toothed grin, Sarah's knowing smile, the wind in their hair. He wondered if they would still smile at him that way when this was over, or if he would see something different in their eyes. Disappointment, betrayal, the realization that the work he'd devoted his life to had finally cost them more than they were willing to pay. Outside, the city lights were coming on, thousands of windows glowing in the darkness, each one hiding its own secrets, its own compromises, its own private calculations of risk and reward. Daniel closed the drawer and returned to work. There was still so much to do. Chapter 4. The wall closes in. The conference room felt smaller than Daniel remembered, as if the walls had shifted inward overnight. It was Monday morning, 7:45, and the 5 members of what Marcus had started calling the Blind Trust Task Force sat around the rectangular table, surrounded by evidence that could reshape American politics or end their careers, possibly both. Rebecca Santos had spread her laptop across one end of the table, 3 external monitors creating a command center of financial data. She was 36, half Mexican, half Filipino, with dark eyes that missed nothing and a reputation in cyber division for finding patterns in data that others dismissed as noise. She'd spent the weekend analyzing digital transaction records, building network maps of money flows, creating visual representations of what the numbers meant. Tom Chin, the other Chin as he'd introduced himself with a self-deprecating smile, occupied the opposite end of the table with printouts arranged in meticulous stacks. He was 29, fresh-faced and earnest, the kind of agent who still believed every case mattered equally, who hadn't yet learned that some investigations were more equal than others. He'd spent his weekend verifying account numbers, cross-referencing financial disclosures, confirming every detail of Jennifer Chen's initial findings. Jennifer sat beside Daniel, her notebook open, pen ready. She looked tired, they all looked tired, but there was something else in her expression now, something harder than the bright enthusiasm she'd carried 3 weeks ago. She'd learned something over the past days, Daniel thought. She'd learned that finding the truth and being able to act on it were 2 very different things. Marcus stood at the head of the table, reviewing the summary document Daniel had prepared. He'd been reading for 5 minutes without speaking, his face unreadable, while the rest of them waited in silence. Finally, he set the document down and looked at each of them in turn. "Before we go any further," Marcus said quietly, "I need everyone in this room to understand something. What we're discussing here today crosses a line. Up until this moment, we've been investigating financial fraud. Serious fraud, yes, but still fundamentally a white-collar crime. What you're about to show me transforms this into something much bigger, much more dangerous. Once I see this evidence, once I know what you know, I become part of it. And so do each of you. There's no walking away from this after today." "We understand," Daniel said. "Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. I'm not sure any of us do." Marcus sat down heavily. "But show me anyway. Show me what you found." Rebecca Santos spoke first, her voice calm and technical. "The financial network we're looking at is sophisticated but not impenetrable. Whoever designed it understood banking regulations, knew how to structure transactions to avoid automatic reporting requirements, understood the use of shell companies and nominee directors to obscure ownership. But they made one critical mistake." She touched her laptop and the largest monitor came to life, showing a complex network diagram, dozens of boxes connected by lines, money flowing like a river system through tributaries and streams. They assumed that fragmenting the money across multiple entities would make it impossible to see the whole picture. But digital transactions leave metadata, timestamps, IP addresses, routing numbers. And when you analyze that metadata across thousands of transactions, patterns emerge. She zoomed in on one section of the network. "This is Prosperity Holdings, the LLC that Jennifer initially identified. It received funds from 7 different sources, then distributed them to Americans for prosperity and growth in a way designed to mimic organic small donor contributions. But look at the timestamps. Numbers appeared beside each transaction, dates and times down to the second. The transfers from these 6 sources," Rebecca highlighted 6 of the 7, "came in at irregular intervals, different times of day, different days of the week, exactly what you'd expect from independent entities making their own decisions about when to move money. But the transfers from this 7th source," she highlighted Senator Hollings's account, "came in at almost exactly the same time every week. 10 a.m. on Fridays like clockwork. 3 transfers, 6 weeks apart, same amount each time. Someone's regular Friday morning task," Jennifer said. "Transfer money to the shell company." "Exactly. And when I analyzed the other accounts Tom identified, the ones belonging to other individuals on our target list, I found similar patterns. Regular transfers, consistent timing, the kind of systematic behavior that suggests this wasn't a one-time thing or a mistake. This was a routine. A process." Tom Chin took over, sliding a thick folder across the table to Marcus. I verified the account ownership for 11 individuals on our list of 63 who made direct transfers to shell companies in this network. Senator Richard Hollings, as we discussed, but also Representative Catherine Marsh from Oregon, Federal Judge Andrew Klein, who sits on the D.C. Circuit Court, Douglas Werner, CEO of Titan Defense Systems, 7 others, all prominent, all powerful, all making regular transfers to entities that then funneled money into political organizations that supported their interests or careers. Marcus opened the folder, began paging through the documentation. Bank statements, transfer records, financial disclosure forms with highlighted sections showing discrepancies between reported assets and actual transactions. The amounts vary, Tom continued. Hollings transferred $150,000 over 6 weeks. Marsh put in $200,000 over 4 months. Klein's contributions were smaller, $50,000 total, but spread over a longer period. Werner is the biggest single contributor we've identified so far, $375,000 over 18 months. And none of them reported these transfers in their financial disclosures? Marcus asked. None of them. They disclosed the accounts. They had to. The balances were above the reporting threshold, but not the specific transactions, which is technically legal if the transfers were to entities they didn't have a reportable interest in. But when those entities then turned around and spent money supporting the same people who funded them, it starts to look like a scheme to circumvent campaign finance laws. Marcus was quiet, still reading. Daniel watched his supervisor's face, saw the implications settling in, saw the weight of what they discovered pressing down on him. There's more, Daniel said quietly. Marcus looked up. Of course there is. Rebecca pulled up a different screen, this one showing a timeline. When we map when these transfers occurred against political events, primary elections, congressional votes, judicial nominations, correlations emerge. Hollings made his 3 transfers in the 6 weeks leading up to his announcement that he was considering a presidential run. Marsh's transfers coincided with a major defense appropriations vote that she championed. Klein received his nomination to the federal bench 3 months after his first transfer to the network. You're suggesting coordination, Marcus said? That these people weren't just independently deciding to funnel money through shell companies, but were acting in concert, timing their contributions to specific political objectives. I'm saying the timing is suspicious, Rebecca replied carefully. Whether it represents coordination or just shared interests among like-minded people, I can't prove from the financial data alone. But the pattern is there. Jennifer leaned forward. I've been mapping the social and professional connections between the 11 individuals we've identified. They don't all know each other, but there are clustering patterns. 7 of them belong to the same private club in Georgetown. 4 serve on the board of the American Enterprise Foundation, a think tank. 6 attended the annual retreat of the Billington Group, an invitation-only policy forum. These are people who move in the same circles, who have opportunities to communicate and coordinate outside of official channels. Marcus set down the folder he'd been reading and rubbed his eyes. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of Rebecca's laptop fans and the distant murmur of the building coming to life around them. Do you know what happens if we're right? Marcus asked finally. If we can prove that 11 powerful people, including a sitting senator, a sitting representative, and a federal judge, conspired to funnel money through fraudulent means into political organizations that supported their own interests? Constitutional crisis, Daniel said. Congressional investigations. Impeachment proceedings. Criminal trials that would dominate news coverage for years. The entire credibility of the federal government called into question. And if we're wrong? If there's an innocent explanation we haven't considered, if our interpretation of the data is flawed, if we're seeing patterns that don't actually represent criminal behavior, then we've destroyed 11 lives and our own careers based on a mistake, Tom said quietly. Marcus stood, walked to the window. Outside, Washington was going about its Monday morning, staffers hurrying to meetings on Capitol Hill, lobbyists preparing for lunch appointments, tourists queuing for museum entry. Normal life, continuing obliviously while 5 federal agents discussed evidence that could upend it all. I have to brief the deputy director this afternoon, Marcus said, his back still to them. He's expecting an update on our progress. What do I tell him? The truth, Daniel said. That we have evidence of systematic campaign finance fraud involving multiple high-level individuals. That we're still developing the case but that the pattern is clear and disturbing. That we need more time and resources to determine the full scope of the conspiracy. And when he asks me if we have enough to charge anyone, when he asks if we're ready to present this to a grand jury, we tell him no. Not yet. We have the financial evidence, but we need to understand the coordination, the intent, the full structure of what we're looking at. We need witness testimony, communications records, documentation of meetings and decisions. The financial fraud is provable now, but the conspiracy charge, that's going to require more work. Marcus turned from the window. How much more time do you need? Daniel looked at his team. Rebecca shook her head slightly. The digital forensics had given them what they could give. Tom looked uncertain, out of his depth. Jennifer met his eyes and gave a small nod. 6 weeks, Daniel said. Maybe 8. We need to subpoena communications records, emails, phone logs, text messages. We need to interview people on the periphery of this network, people who might have knowledge of how decisions were made. We need to build a timeline that shows not just money moving, but people coordinating, planning, executing a strategy together. 8 weeks, Marcus repeated. And in that 8 weeks, while we're subpoenaing phone records and interviewing witnesses, every single person connected to this investigation is going to know we're looking at them. They're going to destroy evidence, align their stories, bring in the best legal talent money can buy. By the time we're ready to make charges, we'll be facing a wall of lawyers and claims of political persecution. I know, Daniel said. But we can't charge them based on what we have now. The financial fraud is clear, but any competent defense attorney would argue their clients believed the money was going to legitimate political advocacy, that they had no knowledge of fraudulent donor practices, that they were victims of the very scheme we're investigating. We need to prove they knew. And that means we need communications, we need testimony, we need someone to flip. The word hung in the air. Flip. Someone who would trade testimony against others for leniency, who would explain from the inside how the network operated, who would provide the intent and coordination that financial records alone couldn't show. Who? Marcus asked. Who on that list of 11 might be willing to cooperate? Rebecca pulled up profiles on her screen. Faces, biographical information, known associates. The weaker links would be the ones with the most to lose and the least institutional protection. Judge Klein is appointed for life. He can't be fired except through impeachment, which is politically difficult. Hollings has Senate seniority and presidential ambitions. He'll fight to the death rather than cooperate. But someone like... She highlighted a face. Gerald Hartwick. Former lobbyist, now a consultant. He transferred $80,000 into the network over 6 months. He's 62, no family wealth, no institutional protection. If we can show him facing federal prison and the loss of his consulting practice versus cooperation and possibly immunity, he might be persuaded. Or he might have the best lawyers money can buy and fight us every step of the way, Tom said. He might, Daniel agreed. But we have to start somewhere. We can't build the full case without someone on the inside telling us how it actually worked. Marcus returned to the table, sat down heavily. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago, Daniel thought. The weight of the investigation was visible in the lines around his eyes, the set of his jaw. Here's what we're going to do, Marcus said. I'm going to brief the deputy director this afternoon. I'm going to tell him we have evidence of significant financial fraud involving political organizations and that we're pursuing it. I'm not going to mention specific names yet, not until we have enough evidence to either charge them or definitively clear them. That buys us some time before this becomes overtly political. He's going to want names, Daniel said. And I'm going to tell him that revealing names prematurely could compromise the investigation, could give targets time to destroy evidence or flee, which is true as far as it goes. But it also protects us, and them, if we're wrong about any of this. How long can you hold him off? 3 weeks, maybe 4. After that, he's going to demand specifics, and I won't be able to stall anymore. Marcus looked around the table at each of them. So here's what you're going to do in the next 3 weeks. You're going to build the absolute strongest case you can against Gerald Hartwick. You're going to document every transfer, every connection, every piece of evidence that shows he knowingly participated in this scheme. And then we're going to bring him in and make him an offer he can't refuse. And if he refuses anyway? Jennifer asked. Then we charge him and we use his prosecution to pressure the others. We make an example of him to show the rest of the network that we're serious, that cooperation is their best option. Marcus's voice hardened. But ideally he cooperates, he tells us what he knows, and we use that testimony to build cases against the bigger fish. That's a lot to assume about someone we've never even met, Tom said. It is. But it's also the only path forward I can see. We can't prove conspiracy without someone explaining the conspiracy from the inside. And Hartwick is our best shot at someone who might talk. Daniel made notes on his legal pad, already thinking about the approach, the interview strategy, the leverage they could bring to bear. Hartwick had transferred $80,000, a significant amount but not as much as some of the others. That suggested he might not be as financially secure, might not be able to afford years of legal battles, might be more vulnerable to pressure. What about the rest of the investigation? Rebecca asked. Do we keep pulling financial records, mapping the network? Yes, but carefully. No more broad subpoenas that tip our hand to multiple targets at once. We focus on Hartwick, we gather everything we need for his case, and we move quietly on the others. The less attention we draw, the longer we have before this blows up in our faces. The meeting broke up shortly after 9. Rebecca and Tom returned to their respective divisions with specific assignments. Rebecca to build a complete digital financial profile of Hartwick, Tom to verify every transaction and connection they'd identified. Jennifer stayed behind with Daniel and Marcus. There's something else, Jennifer said when the others had left. She pulled a thin folder from her bag, handed it to Marcus. I did some research on the Billington group, that policy forum I mentioned, the one that 6 of our targets attended. It's very exclusive, very private. No media coverage, no public agenda, no official membership list. But I found a photograph from their most recent retreat, taken by someone who posted it on social media before apparently being asked to take it down. She opened her laptop, showed them an image. It was a group photo, maybe 40 people in business casual attire, standing on what looked like a resort lawn. Mountains in the background, late afternoon light. This was taken 8 months ago at their annual retreat in Montana. I've identified 18 people in this photo. 6 of them are on our list of 11 targets. But look who else is there. She zoomed in on a section of the photo. 3 faces standing together near the edge of the group. Daniel recognized 2 of them immediately. The FBI director, the Attorney General, and standing between them, smiling at the camera, the deputy director who was receiving weekly briefings on their investigation. The room seemed to tilt. Daniel felt his breath catch in his chest. Are you telling me, Marcus said slowly, carefully, that the person I'm briefing on this investigation is socially connected to the people we're investigating? I'm telling you they attended the same exclusive policy retreat 8 months ago. Whether that represents a meaningful connection or just the kind of networking that powerful people do in Washington, I can't say. But it's there. Marcus stared at the photograph for a long time. Daniel watched his supervisor's face, saw calculations being made, implications being considered, trust being recalibrated. We keep this between us, Marcus said finally. The 3 of us, no one else. Rebecca and Tom don't need to know. And I need to be very, very careful about what I tell the deputy director in our briefings. Because if he's compromised, Jennifer began. We don't know that he's compromised. We don't know anything except that he attended a retreat with some people who are under investigation. That's not evidence of anything except that he moves in elite circles, which we already knew. Marcus closed the folder, slid it back to Jennifer. But it does mean we need to assume that anything I tell him might find its way to our targets, whether through him directly or through the network of connections he's part of. So what do we tell him? Daniel asked. The minimum. That we're investigating financial fraud. That we're making progress. That we need more time. Nothing about specific targets, nothing about the scope of the conspiracy we suspect, nothing that could be used to warn people or prepare defenses. That's going to make him suspicious. He's going to wonder why we're being so circumspect. Let him wonder. Better suspicious than informed. Marcus stood, gathered his papers. My briefing is at 3. You 2 keep working on Hartwick. I want everything ready to move on him by the end of next week. And for God's sake, be careful. If the deputy director is connected to this network, we have to assume others in the bureau might be too. Trust no one outside this room. After Marcus left, Daniel and Jennifer sat in silence. The conference room felt even smaller now, the walls pressing in, the weight of what they were doing becoming almost physical. Do you think we can actually pull this off? Jennifer asked quietly. Against this many powerful people, with possible interference from inside the bureau itself? Daniel thought about Emma, about her idealism, her belief in systems and institutions. He thought about Sarah, waiting at home, trusting that the work he did mattered, that the late nights and the stress served some greater purpose. I don't know, he said honestly, but we're going to try. Because if we don't, then all of this, the bureau, the rule of law, the idea that no one is above investigation, it all becomes just theater. Just a performance to make regular people think the system works while powerful people do whatever they want. Jennifer nodded slowly. My parents came here from Taiwan when I was 3. They believed in America, in the idea that laws applied equally, that you could work hard and succeed on merit. They still believe that. I don't know if I can anymore. Then do this for them, Daniel said. Do this so maybe their belief isn't misplaced. They worked through the rest of the morning and into the afternoon, building the case against Gerald Hartwick, documenting every transaction, every connection, every piece of evidence that showed his participation in the network. By 3 o'clock, when Marcus was briefing the deputy director somewhere in the upper floors of the building, they had enough to bring charges. Whether they had enough to make him cooperate was another question entirely. Daniel's phone rang at 4:30. Marcus calling from his office. "It's done," Marcus said. His voice sounded strained. "I briefed him. He asked questions, I gave careful answers. He seemed satisfied, I think. Or maybe satisfied isn't the right word. He seemed like someone getting exactly the information they expected to get." "Did he ask for names?" "He did. I told him it was too early, that naming people prematurely could compromise the investigation. He accepted it, but barely. I have maybe 2 more weeks before he stops accepting that answer. Then we move on Hartwick next week." "You're sure he's the right target? You're sure he'll flip?" Daniel looked at the evidence spread across the table, at the photograph on his screen showing Hartwick at some charity gala, smiling and prosperous and completely unaware that his entire life was about to collapse. "No," Daniel said. "I'm not sure at all. But he's our best chance and we're running out of time." He hung up and turned back to Jennifer, who was organizing files into folders, preparing for the approach they would make, the interview they would conduct, the moment when they would look Gerald Hartwick in the eyes and offer him a choice between cooperation and destruction. Outside the window, the afternoon was fading into evening. Somewhere in the city, Hartwick was finishing his workday, completely unaware that in a few days, federal agents would knock on his door and change his life forever. And somewhere else, in offices and conference rooms and quiet corners where power gathered, the people they were really after were going about their business, secure in their positions, confident in their protection, certain that whatever investigation the FBI might be conducting would never actually reach them. Daniel hoped they were wrong. But increasingly he feared they might be right. Chapter 5. The Names That Stayed Hidden. Gerald Hartwick's lawyer arrived before Hartwick did. That told Daniel everything he needed to know about how the next 3 hours would go. It was Wednesday morning, 9 days after the conference room meeting, and they were in interview room 3 on the 5th floor of the Hoover building. The room was deliberately austere, gray walls, metal table for chairs, a camera mounted in the corner with a red light that indicated it was recording. Daniel sat on one side of the table with Jennifer. 2 empty chairs waited across from them. The lawyer was a woman named Patricia Voss, mid-50s, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Daniel made in a month. She carried a leather briefcase that she set on the table with a decisive thud before sitting down. No greeting, no pleasantries, just a hard stare that said she'd done this 100 times before and knew all the tricks. "My client is here voluntarily," she said before Daniel could speak. "He's prepared to answer questions as a courtesy to your investigation, but he's not waiving any rights, and this conversation ends the moment I determine it's not in his interest to continue." "Understood," Daniel said. "We appreciate Mr. Hartwick's willingness to talk with us. Let's dispense with the appreciation. You sent 2 agents to his home at 7 in the morning, told him he was the subject of a federal investigation, and strongly suggested that coming in today would be in his best interest. That's not volunteering, Agent Reeves. That's coercion dressed up as cooperation." Before Daniel could respond, the door opened and Gerald Hartwick entered. He looked smaller than he had in the photographs, diminished somehow. He was 62 but looked older, with thinning gray hair and the soft build of someone whose career involved lunches and conference rooms rather than physical labor. His eyes darted between Daniel and Jennifer, then to his lawyer, seeking reassurance. "Sit down, Gerald," Voss said, her tone softening slightly. "Let's hear what they want." Hartwick sat. His hands folded on the table, then unfolded, then folded again. Nervous energy with nowhere to go. Daniel recognized the type. Someone who'd spent his career in the background, facilitating connections, making introductions, greasing wheels. Not a principal player but an enabler, the kind of person who made things happen for others and collected favors in return. The kind of person who might crack under real pressure. "Mr. Hartwick," Daniel began, his voice deliberately calm, "we're investigating financial irregularities involving several political organizations, including Americans for Prosperity and Growth. Our records show you made several transfers totaling $80,000 to an LLC called Prosperity Holdings over a 6-month period last year. Can you tell us about those transfers?" Hartwick glanced at Voss. She gave a slight nod. They were investments, Hartwick said. His voice was higher than Daniel expected, reedy and uncertain. Prosperity Holdings was a venture capital fund that some associates told me about. I invested money with the expectation of returns. Did you receive any returns on these investments? Not yet. The fund was focused on long-term growth. And who were these associates who told you about the fund? Hartwick hesitated. Voss leaned forward slightly. My client doesn't recall specific names. It was casual conversation at various networking events. You know how these things work in Washington. People share investment opportunities. Daniel opened a folder, slid a document across the table. Mr. Hartwick, this is the operating agreement for Prosperity Holdings. There's no mention of venture capital activities, no investment strategy, no distribution schedule. In fact, the stated purpose is political advocacy and education. Does that refresh your memory about the nature of this entity? Hartwick picked up the document with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the pages, and Daniel watched as comprehension and fear moved across his face in waves. I was told it was an investment fund. If the documentation says something different, I wasn't aware of that when I transferred the money. Were you aware, Jennifer asked, speaking for the first time, that Prosperity Holdings was distributing the money it received, including your $80,000, to Americans for Prosperity and Growth, a political action committee? No. I supported APG separately, through normal contributions. But I didn't know there was a connection between them and Prosperity Holdings. Voss held up a hand. Agent Chin, my client has already stated he believed he was making an investment. If you're suggesting he knowingly participated in some kind of campaign finance violation, you need to show evidence of that knowledge, not just the fact that money moved in ways he didn't anticipate. Daniel slid another document across the table. This is an email from Douglas Werner, CEO of Titan Defense Systems, to Mr. Hartwick, dated 14 months ago. In it, Werner writes, he read directly from the highlighted section. The Prosperity Fund is a good vehicle for those of us who want to support the cause without the public disclosure requirements. Gerald, your connections in the nonprofit space would be particularly valuable here. Does this refresh your memory about what you knew? The color drained from Hartwick's face. He stared at the email as if it were a death sentence, which in a way it was. I need to speak with my client privately, Voss said immediately. Of course, Daniel said. Take your time. He and Jennifer left the room, stood in the hallway outside while Hartwick and Voss conferred behind the closed door. Through the small window, Daniel could see Hartwick's hands moving expressively, his mouth forming words Daniel couldn't hear. Voss sat motionless, listening, her face unreadable. He's going to fold, Jennifer said quietly. Did you see his face when he read that email? He knows we have him. Maybe. Or maybe Voss convinces him to claim he didn't understand what Werner meant, that he's been duped by more sophisticated actors, that he's a victim here. Do you believe that? That he didn't know? Daniel thought about it, about the network they'd mapped, about the careful timing of transfers and the sophisticated structure of the money laundering. No. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. But knowing and proving are different things. And Voss is good enough to create reasonable doubt if this goes to trial. They waited 15 minutes. When the door finally opened, Voss gestured them back inside. Hartwick looked worse than before, his face ashen, his hands trembling slightly. My client is willing to provide some information, Voss said carefully, in exchange for immunity from prosecution for any actions related to his transfers to Prosperity Holdings and associated entities. There it was. The offer Daniel had been hoping for and dreading at the same time. Because what came next would determine whether they could build the larger case or whether it would all fall apart. That depends on what information he provides, Daniel said. We need to know the scope and value of his cooperation before we can discuss immunity. Voss nodded as if she'd expected this. Gerald, tell them about the Billington Group meetings. Hartwick took a shaky breath. The Billington Group has quarterly meetings in addition to the annual retreat. Small gatherings, maybe 15 or 20 people, held at different locations around the country. I attended 3 of them over the past 2 years. At these meetings we discussed strategies, ways to support certain policy positions and certain candidates without running afoul of contribution limits or disclosure requirements. Who organized these meetings? Daniel asked. Different people. Sometimes it was Werner. Sometimes Richard Hollings. Sometimes people whose names I didn't know, representatives of organizations or foundations. And at these meetings, did people discuss setting up shell companies to funnel money into political organizations? Hartwick glanced at Voss. She gave another slight nod. Yes. The structure was explained to us, how money could be contributed to LLCs that would then distribute it to advocacy organizations in ways that made it look like grassroots support. We were told this was legal, that smart lawyers had reviewed the structure and confirmed it complied with campaign finance law. Who told you this? I don't remember specific names, but there were lawyers present at the meetings, people from firms that specialize in election law. They presented it as aggressive but legal tax and political planning. Jennifer leaned forward. Mr. Hartwick, were you aware that the organizations receiving this money were using fraudulent donor lists? That they were attributing contributions to people who had never made donations? Hartwick's eyes widened. No, I didn't know that. I thought, we were told that the structure was designed to aggregate contributions, not to fabricate them. If there was fraud in how the money was reported, I wasn't aware of it. Daniel studied his face looking for deception. But all he saw was genuine shock or a very good performance of it. If we give Mr. Hartwick immunity, Voss said, he's prepared to provide detailed information about the Billington Group meetings, including attendees, discussions of strategy, and communications he has from other participants. He's also prepared to testify, if necessary, about what was said at these meetings. We'll need to verify everything he tells us, Daniel said. Communications records, corroborating testimony, documentary evidence. His word alone isn't enough. He understands that. He's prepared to cooperate fully. Daniel looked at Jennifer, saw his own uncertainty reflected in her expression. Hartwick could give them the coordination they needed, the evidence that this wasn't just individual actors making similar decisions but an actual conspiracy. But his claim of ignorance about the fraudulent donors created a problem. If he didn't know about that part, how could he testify that others did? We need to discuss this with our supervisors, Daniel said. Can you give us 24 hours? We can give you until tomorrow morning, Voss replied. After that, my client is going to assume immunity isn't on the table and will plan his defense accordingly. After they left, Daniel and Jennifer returned to his office. The box of files sat in the corner where it had been for weeks now, accumulating evidence, growing heavier with each new discovery. What do you think? Jennifer asked. I think he's telling the truth as he understands it. I think he participated in a scheme to funnel money through shell companies, and I think he believed lawyers when they told him it was legal. But I also think he's smart enough to understand that what he was doing was designed to evade disclosure requirements, which makes him complicit even if he didn't know about the fraudulent donors. So do we give him immunity? Daniel sat at his desk, pulled out his legal pad, began making notes. We give him limited immunity for his testimony about the Billington Group meetings and the coordination that happened there. We get every email, every text message, every document he has. And then we use what he gives us to build cases against the people who were actually running this network. People like Hollings and Werner. Yes, people who have a lot more to lose and a lot more resources to fight us with. Daniel called Marcus, explained what Hartwick had offered. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. You trust him? Marcus asked finally. As much as I trust anyone in this situation. He's scared, he's vulnerable, and he sees cooperation as his best path forward. That makes him useful, even if it doesn't make him trustworthy. Do it. Draft the immunity agreement, get it to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and debrief Hartwick completely. We need everything he knows before the Deputy Director demands names and I run out of stalling tactics. How long do we have? Maybe a week. 2 at the outside. He's getting impatient with my vague updates. He wants specifics, who we're looking at, what evidence we have when we're planning to make charges. And you still think he might be compromised? I think he attended a retreat with people we're investigating, and I think that makes him a liability whether he's actively compromised or not. So I'm telling him the minimum and preparing for the possibility that whatever I say finds its way to our targets. After the call ended, Daniel sat in his office as evening approached, as the building slowly emptied around him. He thought about calling Sarah, but what would he say? That they'd flipped a witness? That they were building a case against some of the most powerful people in Washington? That he still didn't know if they'd be allowed to finish what they'd started? His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Late again? He typed back, yes. Sorry. Important case. Her response came quickly, they're all important. Come home when you can. Not angry, just resigned. 23 years of this, of late nights and absences and the weight he carried home. 23 years of her supporting him, trusting him, believing that what he did mattered. He hoped he wasn't about to prove her wrong. The debriefing of Gerald Hartwick took 3 days. He provided everything he'd promised: emails, text messages, calendar entries showing Billington Group meetings, names of attendees, summaries of discussions about strategy and funding structures. Rebecca Santos verified the digital evidence, confirmed that the communications were authentic, built timelines showing coordination between multiple actors. It was damning. Or it should have been. On the fourth day, Daniel was called to Marcus's office. His supervisor sat behind his desk with the kind of stillness that suggested bad news held carefully in check. "Close the door," Marcus said. Daniel did, sat down, waited. "I briefed the deputy director this morning," Marcus said quietly. "Told him we had a cooperating witness, that we developed evidence of coordination between multiple individuals to evade campaign finance laws, that we were prepared to seek indictments. And he listened to everything I had to say, asked some questions, took notes. Then he told me to close the investigation." The words hung in the air between them. Daniel felt something cold spread through his chest. "Close it? We have evidence of systematic fraud, of conspiracy, of..." "I'm aware of what we have, Daniel. I'm also aware that the deputy director has the authority to shut down investigations that he determines are not in the Bureau's interest to pursue. And he's determined that this investigation is not in the Bureau's interest." Did he give a reason? Several. That the evidence is ambiguous, that coordinating political donations isn't necessarily illegal, that aggressive prosecution of political organizations could be seen as the FBI interfering in the electoral process. That the targets are prominent people whose prosecutions would be politically explosive and might not succeed given the resources they could bring to their defense. Those are excuses, not reasons. Of course they are. But they're the excuses he's chosen to use, and he has the authority to make them stick. Marcus's voice was hollow, defeated. "We're done, Daniel. The case is closed. Write up a final report documenting what we found, and then we all go back to our regular assignments." Daniel stood, paced to the window, looked out at the city that had no idea how close it had come to learning the truth about how power really worked, how money really moved, how the system really operated. What about Hartwick? We promised him immunity in exchange for his cooperation. The U.S. attorney will honor the agreement. Hartwick won't be prosecuted. Neither will anyone else because there's no case anymore. And the others? Hollings, Werner, the judge, the representative, they all just walk away. They were never charged, so there's nothing for them to walk away from. Officially, they were never even under investigation. Their names will appear in the case file, which will be sealed, and that will be the end of it. Daniel turned from the window. "You know this is wrong. You know we had them. I know we had evidence. Whether we could have turned that evidence into convictions against defendants with unlimited resources for legal defense, I don't know. But yes, this is wrong. Yes, it's unjust. Yes, it confirms every cynical assumption people have about how power protects itself." Marcus's voice was bitter. "And there's not a damn thing we can do about it. We could leak it, give the evidence to journalists, let the public, and destroy our careers, violate federal law, potentially compromise legitimate ongoing investigations, and accomplish nothing except proving that we're willing to break rules when we don't get the results we want?" Marcus shook his head. "No. We don't become the thing we're fighting against. We document what we found, we preserve the evidence in case someday someone with more courage or more authority decides to revisit it, and we accept that this is how it ends." Daniel sat back down, felt the weight of defeat settling over him like a heavy coat. "I have to tell Jennifer and the others," he said quietly. "I already did. Sent them all back to their divisions this morning. The task force is dissolved, the case is closed, and everyone is expected to maintain confidentiality about what we discussed and discovered. For how long? Forever, probably. Or until everyone we investigated is dead and it doesn't matter anymore." They sat in silence. Outside the window, Washington continued its eternal rhythm. Meetings and negotiations, deals and compromises, the machinery of government grinding forward while the truth stayed hidden in sealed case files. "I'm sorry, Daniel," Marcus said finally. "I know you put everything into this. I know you believed we could actually see it through. I believed it too for a while." Daniel nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He thought about Emma, about her idealism, about what he would say if she asked him whether the system worked, whether justice still meant something. He thought about Sarah, waiting at home, trusting that the late nights and the stress served some greater purpose. He thought about the 63 names on that list, the powerful people who would never know how close they'd come to exposure, who would continue making decisions and shaping policy and accumulating influence, protected by the same system that was supposed to hold them accountable. "Is there anything else?" Daniel asked. Marcus pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. Your next assignment. Mortgage fraud case out of Phoenix. Same one you were working before all this started. Figured you might want something familiar to focus on. Daniel took the folder but didn't open it. Mortgage fraud. Small-time criminals inflating property values, stealing from unsuspecting investors. Important work, necessary work, but suddenly it felt meaningless compared to what they'd been chasing. He stood, folder in hand, and walked to the door. Daniel, Marcus called after him. For what it's worth, you did everything right. You followed the evidence, you built a solid case, you were professional and thorough. The fact that we're not seeing it through, that's not on you. That's on a system that protects power more effectively than it pursues justice. Daniel nodded and left, walked through the hallways of the Hoover building to his office. Inside, he found the box of files still sitting in the corner, all that evidence of corruption that would never be used. He spent the next hour writing his final report, documenting what they'd found, preserving the evidence in case someday it mattered. When he finished, he sealed the file, marked it confidential, and placed it in his secure cabinet. Then he opened the Phoenix mortgage fraud folder and began to read, trying to focus on property assessments and loan applications and the small, manageable crimes that the FBI was apparently still willing to prosecute. His phone rang at 6. Sarah. Are you coming home? She asked. Yes, he said. I'm coming home. Is everything okay? You sound different. He thought about telling her, about explaining that they'd been investigating some of the most powerful people in Washington and had been shut down just as they were building the case. But the words wouldn't come. Just a long day, he said instead. But it's over now. I'll be home soon. He gathered his things, locked his office, and walked through the building one last time. In the lobby, he passed younger agents just starting their shifts, full of purpose and conviction, still believing that the work mattered, that cases went where the evidence led, that power couldn't simply decree itself immune from investigation. Daniel remembered being that young, having that conviction. He wondered if any of them would keep it, or if they'd all eventually learn what he'd learned today, that some names were never meant to be public, that some cases were never meant to be solved, that the system had limits it would never admit to but would always enforce. Outside, the rain had returned, washing the city clean for another night. Daniel turned up his collar and walked to his car, just another federal employee ending another workday, carrying secrets that no one would ever hear, knowing truths that would never matter. The names stayed hidden. The case stayed closed. And Washington kept its secrets the way it always had, the way it always would. In his pocket, Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Chin, "Thank you for trying." He didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. He drove home through the rain, to Sarah and the life that continued whether justice was served or not, whether the powerful were held accountable or not, whether any of it mattered or not. And somewhere in the darkness, in offices and homes across the city, 63 people slept soundly, protected by power and position and a system that had decided their names were never meant to be public. The truth stayed buried, the way it was always meant to. The end.